Hi, it's Gabrielle from Be Wise Gardens, and today we're going to talk about air plants. So these are really, really, really popular, like hermit crab popular a couple of years ago. And we had a local gift store, and one of the artists there sold them and had like cool little vessels for them and everything. And they aren't as popular anymore. And I think that it's just like how everything, runs its course and comes back around. But these are the ones that we've had since then, and we've kept them alive. And we used to have the person who sold them had like a sheet that said how to take care of them, and she made sure that she sent people home with as much information as she could so that people felt successful with them, because there was a lot of misconceptions. One, air plant to people, they thought, oh, it needs nothing. They can put it in a thing in their bathroom and just ignore it forever. Well, of course it would die. Another thing that people thought was, they just, that they could put somewhere dark, that they didn't require anything. But what it really means is that in its native habitat, it appears to grow from the air. It doesn't need soil. It doesn't need to be taken care of in the same way as a traditional plant, but these are its roots. So it is still a regular plant. It still has all of the requirements of a regular plant. It's just that this would have normally been embedded in something growing up a tree, or maybe even in the bark of a tree, and it would be hanging down like this, much like how orchids grow in the wild as well. And that they're parasitic. So that's what they do, is that they grow off of another plant. It's kind of like how if you've ever been up next to ivy or Virginia creeper, and how it will, if it's growing up the trunk of a tree, yes, it started somewhere in the soil, but if it's growing up the trunk of a tree, it will actually go into the bark and start to get nutrients and everything that needs from water, everything from a tree. So it also becomes parasitic. That's why a lot of times trees get killed, because an ivy or something will literally girdle it, and the tree will die and the ivy will be fine. These aren't quite that intense, but people were really excited about them because they thought, oh, that's a plant for me because it's really low maintenance. But in reality, it actually requires exactly the same as a regular houseplant, meaning it needs water, it needs light, it needs some kind of a food source, and it needs attention. And so if you still have air plants, or if you've seen them in stores and you want to take a shot at them and give them a try, they really are a pretty easy plant, because you're not transplanting them, you're not doing those steps that you would normally do with a house plant, but you still have to water them, you still have to have it like a regimen. And so our regimen is, even though some air plants are different, so like an air plant that's this size right here, and here's its little roots right there, and this would be its crown right above those roots. This little air plant really actually requires more than this air plant, because it dries out faster, because it's smaller. It can't absorb and hold as many nutrients as a really big air plant. Their technical name is Tillandsia, and then there's lots of varieties within that family. And what's this one called? Xerographica? Something really fancy. And this one had a flower, which is pretty awesome. And it's now dry, and normally you would just cut that out. Now, the thing that's interesting about air plants is they do grow like other plants, except that they don't have limbs and they don't have that kind of thing. But what they do have right underneath here is, there's its roots. This is its crown. As leaves drop and die off, they actually die off from the bottom. And so we would, when they get, when the whole thing is brown, like that one, this one isn't all brown, but they just pop off, and that's how you keep them clean. If they don't come off easily, you don't want to tear them, so you would cut them, which I'll show you on one of the bigger ones. So this is where it dies off, this is where it grows new. So as it's replenishing itself and developing new growth, it's right down in here. You can see there's a couple of brand new leaves coming through there. That's also where the flower will come from. And as they grow, this grows bigger and these fall away. Much like any, like Dracaena or palm, or really any plant, where the bottom is where the plant is the oldest, and therefore that's where it grows, or that's where it drops away. So that's where it's very similar. It's also where, I'll show you on one of these. It's also where if you have done a really good job taking care of your air plant, you will get a pup. And a pup is a brand new air plant. And they will suddenly form somewhere down here, and you'll just have a little shoot, and you know, possibly that is the beginning of a pup right there. And what will happen is a little tiny air plant will come up. I mean, just like microscopic. I've held them in my hand, and they're the size of pinheads. They're really, really, really hard to keep alive because they, again, can't absorb as much moisture. And I think it was one of these that had a pup. I can't remember anymore. But anyway, so we tried to keep it alive, but of course, if you forget it for one day, it dries up. If you did get a pup, leave it on there as long as you can, because you're gonna remember to water it and bring it, you know, bring it nutrients that way.
A lot of online resources will recommend that you leave, if you have a pup, you leave it on there until it gets as big as the parent plant.
And then you just break them apart. Yeah, that's the best thing because you're taking care of it. This is our oldest and biggest one, and so I'm being gentle on its new leaves. So you can see where we cut away old leaves and just kept it growing from the inside. It's a really beautiful specimen, but here's where it's growing bigger. And this is starting to get a little bit longer and separate itself out, like almost like a stalk. And so it will be interesting because this is the oldest part of the plant. It's probably like 4 years old now. So basically, we have it in this little log. That's how we displayed that one. So basically, what you need. We usually use our sink. We fill up our sink halfway with water. I usually put just a basic food, but one that, you know, produces flowers in the water. Other than this one, we haven't got any flowers, but it just helps it overall. And this one's a 20-10-20 mixture. And so that is nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. Phosphate is the one that brings flowers. And so it's very, very, very strong. So if I was doing it in the sink and filling my sink with maybe, what is that, like 5 gallons of water, I would probably put that much in the water for a weekly food. Because it's a
synthetic fertilizer.
Yeah, and it's highly concentrated. But for this little bowl, if you just had a couple of air plants, it's just a few granules.
And you should be able to find that on the label.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, always read the instructions.
And then you can reuse that water.
Exactly. And so if you were doing yours in a bowl instead of your sink, you just create this and you put them in upside down. And you want to make sure that it is completely submerged. And you basically leave that for about 20 minutes. Now, through the winter, if you have a little spray bottle, you can just spritz them, you know, like during the week, just to give them a little bit more water, or even soak them again, depending on what you want. But there isn't any air plants in our climate, high desert, or in a desert climate, that you can just spritz them and that they will thrive. They have to be soaked. They have to be just given a lot more water than they would, because they were normally growing in a jungle situation. They're normally growing in somewhere where there's water in the air, and they can collect it from the air, not in this situation. So basically, we just make sure that the whole plant, all the leaves, get a little bit of that food, a little bit, and this is why it's easier. We used to have so many that we had to do in the bathtub, and they've slowly expired over the years. And so then once, let me grab a towel, and use a towel that you don't care about, just because you know, these are plants, and you obviously are gonna have some synthetic food on there as well. And so you're gonna put a towel out once they've soaked for their, you know, 15-20 minutes. Don't leave them overnight. Don't leave them for hours and hours and hours. They can only absorb so much water anyway, so you're not really doing them any good to overdo them, just like with any overwatering of a plant. And so obviously we're not gonna let these sit for the whole 20 minutes, but once they've soaked, they actually feel heavier, they've actually absorbed water. You wanna shake out any excess water, and then you want to dry them upside down. And the reason you wanna do that is because if you notice, every single one of these is a bowl. And if you fill that up with water and scoop it out of your sink and set them like this, that water will sit in that little bowl and it will actually rot the plant a lot faster. and it's just not healthy for it to just soak in water. Obviously in the rainforest, if it rained on them, you know, it would fall in there, but it would also evaporate in a different way because it would be outside. But just make sure and put them upside down. And the same goes even for this little tiny baby one that doesn't have those little cups. It still needs to be shaken out and put upside down. And basically, if you have to do it in a bowl, obviously it will take you quite a bit longer because you would have to, you know, do these one at a time and leave them in here for 20 minutes or more. And so maybe consider just putting them in the bathtub. Or even, you know what, you can go to the dollar store and get one of the little dish pans that people like soak their feet in or do, you know, that kind of thing, or do dishes camping, or a Rubbermaid, some kind of a Rubbermaid tub that you could fill up with cool water and do the exact same thing. And so that's basically air plant care 101.
Yeah.
What else do you think?
You're basically like this kind of air plant. You are wetting all of this silvery foliage, which is actually really tiny little hairs that absorb water. And some people call those more of a xeric air plant
Right.
in the wild than the one that we showed you that was the little tiny
Yes.
green soft one. The foliage is different. This one is much softer, much daintier.
It's not silver.
These ones, yeah, are meant to, in their natural habitat, meant to conserve water and
Right.
also absorb as much water as possible.
So they're more like a succulent.
Yeah, they still need that water. They still need to soak and be wetted.
Right.
And also, if you would like to get more flowers, and if we were really dedicated to this, we could do that, where you set up a grow light situation,
Oh, that's right.
where it constantly has a light that's going to encourage it to bloom.
And there is a company on Amazon, and if we can, we'll try to tag it. But it is a grow light, a kind of an elegant modern grow light company, and they're really, I just had somebody suggest them to me, and they're pennants that you can plug into the wall, and they come down and they hang, and they actually are really beautiful. They are modern. They're not, you know, if you have a traditional or you know, different kind of style house, then maybe it doesn't work. But they're like canisters, or there's flared ones. There's the ones that are directional lighting, like would be in an art gallery. What is that called? Not can lighting, where there's different ones from the ceiling.
Yeah, I don't remember.
But anyway, it's like directional, and not pot lights, I don't remember, but it doesn't matter. But anyway, they have some really cool versions of that are highly sought after now, because people are getting more and more plants and it's becoming more and more important to them. But it's a more elegant thing than just you know, having a silver flared light with a grow light in it. Although I did just order 4 grow lights that are just the bulbs, and they were like $18 each. And in the rooms where we have a bunch of plants and there's a lamp over that plant, I am going to change out that light bulb because they aren't as harsh as they used to be. I mean, it is a daylight, it's the version of daylight, so it is going to be way brighter than just a soft white bulb. But there's 4 different lamps in our house that I am going to change out and put that grow light in and just see what happens, because even though our house is pretty bright, we do have some dark corners, and I think that would be, you know, it's just a nice thing to do for the plants, just because they're struggling in the winter anyway, even if they were outside, because the light has been reduced so much. And so why not help them out if you can? So I'm going to do that.
Yeah, cool. And typically a grow light would be some kind of different light spectrum than, you know, the warm bulbs that we
Absolutely.
use in our homes and in our lives.
Exactly. And they are absolutely, like, they're specifically say grow lamp or grow bulb. It's not just a regular like daylight bulb that you get at Home Depot. It has to specifically say grow, and it gives it a full spectrum so that they can thrive in the winter as well.
Yeah. And these will sit here and dry out completely before flipping them back over, so that none of that water gets trapped in them.
Exactly. And then the thing to remember is in the winter, you might need to do this a little bit more often. Your heat has come on. I'm feeling the heat right now. And it's drier in your house in general. And so a plant like this or any of your plants that usually take up a little bit more water will enjoy more water. And then remember that your plants that don't use as much water because it's winter, so that's your jade plants, your cactus, your aloe, anything with like a fat leaf, anything that's a cactus or a succulent, remember to cut their water way back. The Sansevieria or snake plants, rubber plants, ZZ plants, all of those need less water going into the winter. And so just pay attention. You want your soil to dry out. You don't want them to sit in wet, moist soil all winter. So for me, those plants, which I normally only water maybe once a month anyway, are now going to go to like a 6 or 7 week cycle. So, but these are going to get watered more. So thank you very much and have a great day. If you have any questions, always just contact us, bewisegardens@icloud.com or on IG, Beways Gardens. Thank you, bye.